I want to talk to Dave in Georgia. Dave, you are on the line
Hey,
with Christy and Johnny. Says here you want to give your perspective of being a former Christian who was into Christian nationalism. And I picked you because that's great. You found your way out. And this is in the news. So what was tell us how you found your way out, please.
well, before I get into that, it was good talking to you guys, by the way.
Yeah, good talking to you too.
I would basically like to, because you said, you grew up in a Catholic church and you really didn't see some of the things you're seeing now back then.
Yeah.
I became a Christian 31 years ago, and I was baptized. One of the first things I remember my pastor doing was giving me a voter's card.
Mm-hmm.
From the very beginning, we would stand on street corners with anti-abortion signs, all through, and of course, we're talking about early days of Rush Limbaugh. We're talking about, trying to, turn the court into the favor to overturn Roe v. Wade.
Jerry Falwell, the moral majority.
What I was brought into was equally as political as it was religious. And so what we're seeing now, January 6th and whatever, not that everybody that I was a member of would even taken place of, what happened on January 6th. But the thing is that this has just been building and building and building in churches all across this country. Now, how I got out of it, basically, I was a missionary, and eventually, through a series of studies on the doctrine of hell, began to question my belief, and eventually I'm no longer a Christian. So.
Okay. That's it. So it was just a self-motivated departure from that worldview?
Well, there was some personal things, one, but then two, I was serving in a country halfway around the world where, just based upon statistics, over 95% of the people were dying and going to a hell that I believed was real. And so as I'm building churches, as I'm meeting people, eventually, do I have a minute? There was a young girl who I led to Christ, and one day she was reading out the book of Acts where God wanted, Paul wanted to go to Asia, but God wanted him to go to Rome. And the girl in the church read this, and she came and she ran, pedaled her bike to my house crying and saying that why didn't God send Paul to Asia? Because maybe her grandpa would have been saved.
Uh-huh.
And, it's just real true life stories like that begin to shake you in ways that you never realized, and make you question in ways you never realized. And of course, I would set out to try to prove the Bible was true, but the more I just began to see the reality of it, and on a daily basis, I just began to doubt more and more, and eventually jettison the belief.
Yeah. Okay. So what are you seeing people who are talking these talking points for Christian nationalism still amongst your family and friends? You found your way out, but what about other folks around you? What are they saying, and how are you talking to them?
My wife.
Oh,
my wife is still a Christian, fundamentalist Christian. She's she believes that the election was stolen. She believes that the people who invaded the building on January 6th were invited in. She believes this is a whole mass conspiracy, including the COVID shot and everything. And so she's not somebody who's going to go invade the Capitol building, but she's someone who believes in the very same things that they believed.
Yeah. Now you love your wife, and other than that, I'm going to ask, do you have a pretty healthy relationship? You can communicate openly, and you enjoy time together, and all those good things?
We have a healthy relationship, and very few people who were ministers who were fundamentalists are still married to their fundamentalist wife. So we're something that, if you look at the Clergy Project, there's very rare that a fundamentalist minister is still married to his wife when he came out. But for me and her, it's almost like it's an elephant in the corner of the room. We both know it's there. Sometimes it comes up, and it's not fun when it happens.
No.
It's not fun waking up every day with your wife believing you're going to hell. Now, in her mind, she doesn't wake up every day and go, "Oh, my husband's going to hell." She doesn't.
Right.
That's not how she thinks. But ultimately, she believes that I'm going to eventually come back around, believe in Christ again. And, if you think about it, I can no longer, she no longer has a Christian husband that she married. And so there's a certain part of intimacy that dies. And then I can't be my authentic self with her because my authentic self offends her. And so it's up to this point, we've been married 23 years. I love her more than I love myself. I think that's winning out, but it's hard.
Yeah, and it's sincerely worth asking the question, just who is being served by this relationship and how well are you being served? I don't want to sound at all as if you don't have permission to be in this relationship. And I think a lot of people might take it there, that might, kind of look down their nose at you and say that it's morally wrong or whatever else. And, it may be depending on the particulars of what you are normalizing or participating in. But ultimately, I think that you have every right to be in this relationship. And I'm glad to hear that it's full of love and that there's value in it. But it does sound very challenging, and it might be worth asking the question, at least, of is this relationship in anybody's best interest?
Yes, and there's times that I just wish I could just, let her marry a Christian husband and for me to marry someone closer, more beliefs than I would, and it would just seem to be so much easier. I just don't think either of us are prepared to do that.
Sure. Well, I mean, the only way to be prepared is to prepare. That doesn't mean that you need to actively start plotting to pull out of this relationship. But, everybody who's ever been prepared started out unprepared and then took some steps. And I'm not pushing you to take any particular steps, but this sounds pretty overwhelming. And you've just got the one life to live. I hope that you live yours with as much joy and love and passion and everything else as you possibly can. And when we are in these types of situations, there's a sense of obligation. There's a sense that we're not really allowed to be curious or to even consider alternatives. And so, without wanting to be a stranger on the internet trying to tell you about your marriage, and I really apologize if I come across that way, I guess I would just like to invite a little bit of curiosity.
Yeah, and then Dave, it sounds like you're struggling with like what we all struggle with as we grow over time. People in relationships change. They grow together, but sometimes they grow apart. I'm not saying that you're growing apart, but you are reaching a point where in one aspect of life, you are growing apart from your wife. And if you're leaving her to that world, that QAnon world, that storm the Capitol world, that all that stuff, then you're not engaging, and you don't have to have complete overlap with a partner. I don't think that's probably healthy either. But
Sure.
that sounds like it's a major portion of her worldview, of what she thinks the world is like, of what she thinks or who she thinks you are like. And although it can be difficult to have those conversations, it may benefit you in the long run, either to strengthen your relationship, to change the nature of your relationship, or to develop away from this relationship, whatever it might be. Do you know what news sources she's consuming, Dave? Like, where is she getting her info?
Oh yeah, she's American News One. She's the Breitbart. She reads all the time.
Yeah.
And so she's getting her news from the sources you would expect.
Yeah. Do you ever talk about, sometimes you can't have a direct conversation about things like that, but you can have a collateral. You can collaterally attack those topics by approaching it from the side, talking about the reliability of that. Maybe you have?
Well, we've had those in the past, and they've been just totally unfruitful. And so once again, that's part of the elephant in the corner of the room.
Right. That's a tricky position, right? I mean, and does she ever come out and say, honey, you're going to be burning in hell? And then do you ever say, how do you feel about that? What do you want to do about that? Am I wrong? I mean, what are the consequences to those thoughts? I mean, I know you shy away from it and it gets ugly, and then you go about your regular life. You go shopping, you go do things, and you have friends and family in common and love. Obviously, there's love there. Otherwise, you wouldn't persist in this relationship. But what about following the trail? Can you maintain? Does it get emotional? Does it get hyper animated? And do you have shouting matches, or is it more conversational and cool headed? What are those conversations like? And are you afraid of following that path? See where the rabbit trail goes to. Are you afraid of that, or have you done it?
Well, the only time that we generally argue, and I'm not talking about just stone cold drunk, but I'm talking about having a glass of wine or two.
Sure.
And that comes out.
Yeah.
And but that doesn't happen all the time. But for the most part, like I said, she keeps what she believes to herself. I keep what I believe to myself.
Yeah.
On one hand, I want to write a book, and I'm in the process, but I don't want her looking over my shoulder and what are you writing?
Right. Exactly.
It's just I never thought I'd be in this position, but
I hear that.
We get this call fairly often about partners who've left religions unevenly. And I guess this is your path to navigate. Marriage counseling may be a good idea. Individual counseling may be a good idea. If you want to explore that at some point.
Well, I've tried. I've tried to, because I had a counselor through the therapy project.
Yeah.
But she wants a Christian counselor. And so she went and saw the guy from the secular therapy project, but she just told him the situation, and she didn't want to see him again because he didn't believe in Jesus. Wow. And so she'd be afraid that he would try to pull the wisdom of man over her head, And so I really don't want to go see a Christian therapist.
Y'all are pulling in two very different directions.
Yeah.
So right now there's not a whole lot of movement, and everybody feels a little bit stuck. And I want to say that sucks. And I really do sincerely feel for you. At the same time, I want to just emphasize that that's your right. There's no right way or wrong way to have a marriage. There are some ways that are more enjoyable than others, for sure. But ultimately, if this relationship is working for you, then it's working for you. I would just continue to encourage you to ask yourself, is this working for me?
Right. And Dave, I think that's all we got for you today. I encourage you to keep up, have those difficult conversations, keep examining where you're at. You don't have to stay in. You don't have to leave. You don't have to go to a Christian counselor. You don't have to make her go to a non-Christian counselor. There's a lot of options available to you, and only you and your wife are going to be the ones that are going to be able to make that decisions for yourself. So, best of luck to you. I wish you success in whatever direction you go.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Take care.
Take care. Good luck.